Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic, and if you look behind me, you can see I have plenty of shrimp tanks in my shrimp room, but they're all designed for Caridinia shrimp, and I have 0 tanks for Neocaridina. So let's fix it today and build a new tank for Neocaridina shrimp. And here's our tank. It's quite decent size for Neocaridina shrimp. It's roughly about 10-gallon volume or about 40 liters. As you can see, I already installed the frosted film at the back of the tank. And now let me show you which light I'm gonna use here. And here's the light for this tank. And this very cheap LED light. It has some blue and some white LED strips, and it should be good enough to growing plants in this tank. Alright guys, we've got our tank, we've got our light, everything is ready, and now it's time to set up a filter, and let me show you which filter I'm going to use for this tank. For this setup, I'm going to use, you guess it, an Undegravel filter box, my favorite filtration for Caridinia shrimp. But in this tank, we're going to have Neocaridina, so it's a slightly different story. You guys probably know that Caridinia shrimp benefit from active soil. That's why we fill our UGF box with active soil, the water running through the soil, lowering the pH, releasing all the nutrients, all this good stuff which makes the Caridinia shrimp happy. But Neocaridina shrimp, they don't need that, so that's why we're not going to use active soil in our UGF. We're just going to use the simple media. Hey guys, here I have a box of prime pore media from Quadrop, a Polish brand. It's been on my shelf for many months, so now it's time to finally use it inside this little UGF box. Okay, we have our prime pore media inside this UGF box, but it's definitely not enough. You can see it's not even a half. So luckily I have a bucket of CHM matrix media left, and we can use it inside this UGF as well. Alright guys, we finished with the media. It's definitely going to be enough for the size of the tank, and we still have a little bit space inside this UGF, and I'm going to fill it with the crushed corals, and let me explain you why. The reason why I want to put some corals inside the tank is because I want to buffer the pH of the water. You probably know that Neocaridina, they thrive in the water with pH, and I'm going to use the water which I'm using for my Caridinia tanks. Let me show you quickly. So here I have 2 large water tanks. The bottom one is about 200 liter, and this one is for water change. And the top one is for water top off, it's about 90 liters. Both of these tanks have a pump inside, and those pumps connected to water top off system, and when I need to do the water change, all I need to do is to drain a little bit of water from my tanks, then switch on the pump inside this large tank, and this pump will fill the water. And once the water fills to the right level, the floating valve will shut the water in all the tanks. Same thing for the water top off tank. Here we have a pure RO water and the pump connected to the timer, and about once a day for half an hour this pump starts to work and top off all the tanks inside this rack. So guys, I prepare this water for my Caridinia shrimp, and I only add shrimp mineral GH+. That's why we don't have any KH in this water. And our Neocaridina shrimp needs some KH in the water, but I don't want to mix a separate water for them. It's gonna add a lot of work for me. I just want to simply plug this tank into my water system and just forget about it. That's why we need that corals in the tank, because the corals will buffer your water with KH. And here I have a bag of corals which I collected on the beach in Thailand. Lovely, very beautiful corals. So all we need to do is just to crush them in little pieces and add them in our UGF box. Alright, we have our crushed corals inside the UGF, and we managed to fill it right to the top. I also mixed a little bit of coarse crushed coral sand which I got in this bag, and that should be enough for this tank. So now it's time for the substrate, and I'm gonna use something very light for this setup, mainly because Neocaridina is really popping on the light substrate. I don't really like to use like an active soil, like a dark substrate for Neocaridina shrimp, mainly because it's not popping in there. You can see I have a blue dream Neocaridina there. I just started feeding the shrimps and she came here in the front. Lots of babies coming here to eat as well. But I want to grow some plants in this tank, and decorative sand, which we're gonna use for the setup, it doesn't have any nutrients. So we have to add some nutrients to this tank. And what I did before, I just add active soil to the bottom of the tank, cap it with decorative sand. But today I want to try different and a little bit cheaper option. So the first stage is to add some nutrients to the bottom of this tank as a base layer. And for this I'm gonna use the stuff called NutriBase. I have a bag of it right here. Let me just show it to you. Oh, this bag quite heavy and dense. So what it is basically is a mix of sand with crushed lava rocks and like aqua soil. It's very rich in nutrients, and it works really well as a base layer for the planted tank. This is how the stuff looks. So now let's put some of it to the bottom of our tank. We don't need to put too much of this stuff. A couple of scoops full would be just enough. A little of it goes a long way. It also has some beneficial bacteria inside, so it's going to help us with the cycle. This is more than enough for the base layer. And to add even more nutrients to our mix, I'm going to top it up with aquatic compost. And here I have a huge bag of premium aquatic soil. Basically it's the same as a normal compost, but has a reduced amount of nutrients, which should work perfect for plant tanks. So I'm only going to use 2 of these cubes. We don't need too much of this stuff. This stuff is very potent. And now I can mix everything together, why not? I might need to be careful with the glass, I don't want to scratch it. So next I'm gonna use the sand flattener and I'm gonna bring this mix away from the front glass. Because we're not gonna have any plants here at the front. It's gonna be a shrimp tank and I want to have an open area at the front just to see all the shrimps. When I feed the shrimps, they all can come at the front and we can see that. That works really well for the shrimp tank. Now we can cap over the top of all of this with the sand. And here I have a desert sand, which is very fine sand, and fine sand works really good for capping the nutrients. So I'm gonna add a few scoops on top of it. So the next stage what I did, I added a little bit more of crushed coral sand on top of the fine sand, just to make sure we have enough of the coral inside this tank to buffer the pH of the water. Now we're ready to put the final layer, our decorative sand gravel, but before that I want to add even more nutrients to our substrate. So I'm going to crush 5 of these flourish root tabs to the very fine dust, and then we're going to add it to the tank. Let's make it 6. Let's crush them to the dust. Once we plant the plants, the root system not going to be developed yet, and these crushed root tabs will be very handy because they're going to be very close to the surface. I just want to add a little bit more nutrients to the top layer of our substrate. So I'm going to put a little bit more at the back because at the back is going to be a lot of plants. I think we're going to have some plants at the front of the UGF for sure. So now we're ready to add our sand gravel. That's quite coarse sand. Look very natural. I think it's gonna look cool in this tank. Alright, we finished with the substrate and our tank is already looking good. And take a look at this UGF box. It's halfway down into the substrate and it actually works really well because I don't want to see it too much. I want to keep it hidden, and later we're going to plant some plants around it just to make it less noticeable. And it's hard to say from the front that we have different layers of soil, but if you look at the side you can see we have our mix of nutri-base with compost, we have our fine sand, we have our crushed corals, and we have our sand gravel. And I also created a slope from front to back just to get more depth inside the tank. So the next step is to put some hardscaping to this tank. And I'm going to use some wood because wood works really well in the shrimp tanks. The biofilm grows insane on the wood and the shrimps absolutely love it. This is actually the old wood I have in my collection. So let me play with these pieces and see if I can come up with something decent. This looks okay. We don't have much space to maneuver because of this UGF box. We only have a little area there, and I think it looks good because we can put some plants in the middle there, so in the corner as well. And I put a little piece there just to hide this UGF box. It's also a good idea to add a little bit more soil to the back to bring it a little bit up. This way, once we put some stem plants there, they're gonna look much better. And to lock everything together, I'm gonna use some paper tissue and a super glue. Very famous method of locking together the hardscape. I think many aquascapers using this. So I put the paper towel first, and then we're gonna add some glue to lock it in place. I also have some spray activator to make the glue dry much faster, so we're gonna spray it. We glued everything together. We just can do a little tap test just to make sure everything is nice and strong, and when I shake it you can see everything is moving together. So that's done. Now it's time to add a little bit more soil to the back of the tank. Looking good, and if you look from this side you can see we have a quite big elevation here. And once we plant our stem plants in the corner, we don't need to wait for them to grow. We will see them straight away. They're gonna pop straight away. Now we're actually ready for plants, but before do that, I'm gonna add a few more root tabs in this corner because we have a quite thick layer of soil. You can see all the nutrients stay at the bottom, and by the time the root's gonna grow to the bottom, it's gonna take like a month or so. So it's better to add a few more root tabs here just to supply more nutrients to that stem plants at the back. So I just broke the root tabs into the small pieces, and then I'm gonna use pincet and I'm gonna bring them to just underneath of this soil here in the corner. So I have here a mid-ground plant, Hydrocatal Japan, and I have some Anubis and Bucephalandra, which we're gonna attach to the wood. So let's do it now. So I'm gonna put one Anubis here just inside the gap between the rock and the wood, because we have a paper towel with super glue there, so I want to close it. Yeah, I think like so, looking cool. Another Anubis can go here. Alright, so far so good. I finished with the Bucephalandra and Anubis. Also we planted some Hydrocatal Japan. It's really difficult to say where the top, where the bottom of this plant, so it comes like this, like a grape or something. Hopefully it's gonna grow nicely. Anyway, it's growing really nicely in this tank. It's like a big ball of this plant. So I planted it into this little glass bowl long time ago, and now it detached and started to floating, so it's growing like a floating plant. And guys, I think I found a perfect space for this tank, and I want to put it here between these two water tanks I showed you before. I was planning to put a large tank, like 60cm tank like this one here, and do a nice aquascape and do a nice fish tank, but I'm not going to do it now. So before I do it, I can put this tank here, and when I decided to put a larger tank here, I also can move it on top of the shelf here. This tank is already quite heavy without water. We have so much stuff inside. Yes guys, take a look at this. This space is absolutely perfect for this tank. It looks awesome here. And guys, I just plug everything. I plug the water top off system and / water change system to this tank. And I also plug the UGF to my air system. So you can see I have a little valves here, especially for this tank. I have lots of spare valves here when I build another rack here. So yeah, all my tanks in my shrimp room, they just connected to one pump. So only one pump running and all tanks air driven. This is what is good about UGF. You save a lot of energy on that as well. Wow, it looks awesome already. What I really like about this tank is that it's nice and bright compared to my other setups where I'm using aqua soil. Because I'm keeping Caridina shrimps, they need aqua soil, and the aqua soil is not really bright, so that's why I really like this tank. It's very bright. And this is the tank where we're gonna get all the stem plants from. This is my kind of farm tank where I'm growing the plants. That's very tall hair grass. It's supposed to be a dwarf hair grass, but it doesn't look like a dwarf. It looks like a gigantic hair grass. Take a look at the top as well, guys. It looks like a jungle. We have plants start to coming from the tank, so definitely need a trim. And this is how our tank looks now. I know it doesn't look good because we trim our plants almost to the ground level, but that's fine. The plant's gonna grow back in no time with CO2. So now at least we can see all the shrimps and fish nicely because there's not much hiding space for them. Yeah, quite happy with this tank. Lots of different colors. And here in the bucket I've got all these plants from this tank. That's a huge amount. And guys, here I already prepared the stem plants for a new setup. They're not only the stem plants here, I also have some carpeting plants. We have Elycharis mini, we have HC Cuba, here is Rotala hetra, some bunch of other stem plants. And here I have some Rotala hetra. This plant has a little red tint in it. So this is the only red plant I'm gonna use for this setup. And I'm planning to put it right in the corner over there. I think it's gonna look nice there. And the next plant I've got here called Hatonia palustris, and it's gonna go right in the middle between these two pieces of wood. And the next plant is Linderina rotundifolia. I really like this plant, it's very beautiful. Okay, looking good, and we finished with the stem plants. I think 3 types of the stem plants should be enough for this tank. It's not a huge tank and we don't have much space at the back, and lots of space taken by UGF. And we're gonna put some more plants on top of UGF later in the video, but now it's time to put some more plants to the mid-ground, and we also can finish with a little bit of carpeting plant at the very front. And for the mid-ground, I'm gonna use a plant called Aquarium. I never used them before, I don't know why. They're beautiful plants. I think the short name of them is Crypt, and I have here Aquarium Willisii, and I have another plant which a little bit different called Aquarium Bicetti. And take a look at these plants, they are really beautiful. I think it's gonna be a good idea to put them at the front of the UGF. I'm gonna put another Aquarium into this corner as well. I think it's a good place for that. Yes, this is what I like. Take a look at all the plants we added here. Looking good. This Eleacharis mini here at the front of the woods look awesome. Look like a little forest here. Don't mind this here on the Anubis. This is a dead algae. It's gonna go away soon. And what we're missing now is something on top of the UGF because we have a quite empty space here. So I'm thinking to add a little coconut shell with the moss or something like that. I think if we add a small river rocks and pebbles at the front of the tank, that will be a good additional detail. Now I want to show you the most recent setup. I featured it on my last video. This one is made with the UGF box as well, but this one is for Caridinia shrimp. That's why I have an active soil inside this UGF. And the shrimp's doing absolutely fantastic here. And why I'm showing to you this tank, guys, is because I want to take one of this coconut shell, I'm not sure which one, and place it on top of the UGF in our new setup. I think this coconut shell is gonna work just great. And look at this Phasidens moss. That's growing insane here in CO2 environment. So let's take this one and put on top of our UGF. And now, I absolutely love this tank. Lots of details, lots of beautiful plants, and in a week or so, once our plants start to grow, this tank is gonna look even better, because at this moment we have a fresh cuts and the plants haven't developed the root system yet. And for now, before the plants develop their root system, they're gonna get all the nutrients from the water column. That's why it's quite important to add some liquid fertilizers. And we don't need too much for this tank, 10 milliliter is enough. So now I'm going to add some fish flakes into this tank daily, just to pretend we have a fish here. This way we're going to add some ammonia into this tank and feed nitrifying bacteria. And because we added lots of plants from my established tanks, we already seeded this tank with beneficial bacteria, and it should cycle in no time. It's been 3 weeks since we set this tank up. The tank is looking fantastic. I'm absolutely happy with the final result, and the plant's growing insane with this method. And I want to give a credit to MD Fish Tanks for this method with aquatic compost and NutriBase as a base layer. It works really well for him, and it looks like it works good for us as well. Before I use aqua soil as a base layer, it works great as well, but this method is much cheaper. As you can see, we managed to mask our UGF box here with the plants, and now it's completely hidden. The cycle completed very fast here. It only took around 10 days, mainly because we put a lot of plants from established tanks and we seeded this tank with nitrifying bacteria. And after the cycle completed, I added some fish here in this tank. The fish is very good to grow biofilm in the tank and make it fully established. It's quite important to do it before you put your shrimps in the new tank. Never cut the corners and put your shrimps too early. Always take your time. And speaking of shrimp, they just arrived today and we should have some beautiful Neocaridina shrimp inside. So let's open this box and see what we got. Alright, all the shrimps here in this box, and take a look at them. They are blue Neocaridina. I think they are called Blue Dream. We have 2 dead shrimps. That's fine, I'm not going to complain about that because we still got some extras, and I ordered 20 of them, and I think here I have 21. And guess here I just caught 7 more Neocaridina shrimp from my Caridinia shrimp tank. Take a look at them here. So they are the last survivals from my Blue Dream Neocaridina colony, which I had about 1 year ago. Alright, I just finished acclimating the shrimps and I moved them here in this little container. So now let's put them in. There we go. I knew that the shrimp would stand up so bright against this light substrate and rocks and grass as well. I love how this tank turned out. The shrimp looked to be happy here and they started to work hard cleaning this tank straight away. The shrimp eat all the time and they need constant supply of food. That's why we waited for 3 weeks and grew that biofilm and algae for them. So now they are happy. It's been 3 weeks since my last update and today this tank is 6 weeks old. You can see I added a catappa leaf, I also added some ramshorn snails and some floating plants as well. These 3 things are massively beneficial for your shrimp and I recommend having them in your shrimp tank. I also added a pregnant guppy here just to save your babies, and you can see we have lots of fish fry here in this tank. They won't be here for very long. The shrimp look happy and healthy, they're very active and it shouldn't be long before they start to breed here. The plants have stretched a bit from my last update, and what I've noticed, guys, is that they are very bright here in this tank. Look at this Rotala Hetra, it's so red here. I've never seen that so red before. Let me quickly show you my other tank so you can compare. And guys, remember my farm tank where I cut the plants almost to the ground level about like 5-6 weeks ago? This is how it looks now. I told you guys the plant's gonna grow back in no time. And look at this Rotala Hetra here. It's not as bright, it's not as red as we have in our new setup. And this is because we have so much nutrients in our new tank substrate, more than enough for this plant to thrive. It's been 20 years since I set this tank up and it's been a long time. I got all ready, so I decided to finally do an update on this tank. This tank doing fantastic. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.